Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Boston-based jazz trombonist and composer Will Zimmer. We spoke with him on January 13th, 2021 about his new CD, Hangout Theory, the COVID-19 world, his time at Berklee, and playing at the institution in Boston known as Wally's, and so much more. Get to know him.
Hey, thanks for taking a minute out.
Yeah, thanks for calling me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So let's start off here. The pandemic release, Hangout Theory. Talk to me a little bit about kind of the timing of this and what's going on in the planet, anything that may have gotten into your decision-making for this album.
Well, I actually recorded it almost over a year ago, like before I was even thinking about, anyone knew about the pandemic. And yeah, I recorded it in September, and I was planning to release it in March 2020. Yeah, obviously, everything fell apart. I kind of sat on it for a while, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do because I was really looking forward to doing like a live concert. I was going to do it in Rochester where I recorded the album with the people I recorded with, do like a whole big event. So I was kind of, I just didn't really know what to do. So I figured an online release is better than no release at all.
Well, I think probably now, too, is probably a good time for people to get new material. I think it's probably just keeping people busy. I know personally, when I get CDs, in the mail, I just see that there's a continuity that's existing in the world of music, and that's comforting.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely, something to look forward to, something to keep my mind off of everything that's going on. And it's just been a long time coming. Like a lot of the music on the album, some of the songs were written like 2, 3, 4 years ago, and some of them were written like right before I recorded it. And I've been working on a bunch of stuff for my next release, which I haven't planned yet, but it's kind of just like in my vision.
Right on. I guess right now we can kind of look back at some kind of romanticized fashion at like prior to like March 12th to 13th. And, like the BC before Corona world. And when we do, what was the last show you did? Do you remember it? Was it special? What was going on?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So this is the last. So I teach trombone lessons at a school in Somerville, Massachusetts. And every Wednesday I was playing in a house band at Wally's, a cafe. So that was March 5th. So the day I got to the school, we found out that somebody in the school had coronavirus. So they shut everything down early, had no clue what was going on. And then I was going to play at Wally. So I went there afterwards. The club was almost empty. And we played the set, and that was the last thing I played was at Wally's. And I remember just sitting at the bar with some of my friends in the band and some other like musicians in Boston. We were kind of just, musing about what was going on and how everything was closing. So that's the last like real jazz gig I did in a club. It was March 5th, right before everything shut down.
Boston's one of those rare places that I haven't been to up in that kind of northeast area. My dad was born in Brooklyn from New York, and I've been around up there. And I always love the vibe of Boston. There's so much that's going on up there, and I always hear about Wally's. Is Wally's kind of the magical village vanguard for the Boston area?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's the spot. There's places like talking about musing before the pandemic, I was just thinking about how that, every night after 9 o'clock it's packed, and there's just amazing music, and it's one of the best jam sessions in the city on Friday and Saturday night. But there's a jam every night there, so it's definitely the place to go.
Absolutely, and hopefully all these mighty places around the country will come back. Like we have the Green Lady Lounge here, and same thing, man. You go there on the weekends, and it's like this is the kind of place where you walk into, and it has all these old chandeliers and red veneer, and it looks like a vampire lounge, but it's like packed, and everybody's in there doing it. They're kind of the hallmark is the Hammond B3, and it's just swinging. So I'm starting to kind of romanticize that, I guess, a little bit in my personal narrative, just because how long it's gone, and I keep talking to you cats, and I think in the beginning we thought this was going to be a bump in the road, we're going to get back. Now it's a way of life. This is like this ambiguous shroud of what the future is going to hold and when we're going to come back is like, it's wild, man. It's really wild.
Yeah, it is wild. Yeah, I guess in my own, like playing and writing, like going out to the clubs is what keeps you going, like hearing other musicians and especially learning like repertoire and tunes. You hear a song or that you don't know or that you thought you knew, and you go back and you practice it and you come back the next night and try to play it. So a lot of that is like just kind of, it's hard to keep yourself fresh, I guess is what I'm trying to say, without going out and playing with other people. I'm sure every musician feels this way, and it's definitely something I think that's really hard to deal with right now.
Well, and I guess the one thing, the hallmark of being a creative person or an artist is that you look for inspiration. If there was ever a Bob Dylan moment, my God, America exploded into like 5 or 6 since this started. So you got that going on, and then also you have time to woodshed. And I've heard it from people. If you go back and look in the annals of like jazz history, and you can see all these things and kind of accumulate. Maybe when you guys come back and you're full force live, there's going to be so much that's going to be kind of a renaissance thing.
Yeah, I really think so. I mean, people are going to be wild for music, and I think especially more creative types of music that have more, expressive outlets.
And, I keep thinking, too, with sports, I mean, what's going to happen the first day that Fenway Park is, like, full to capacity? Like, people on the East Coast are like, get the hell out of my face. Everybody's going to be hugging each other. It's going to be tears. It's going to be like a big love fest up here. Oh, my God.
Absolutely.
It's going to be wild. So I guess the one thing, too, about your history and lineage, are you from Boston?
No, I'm actually, I was born in Dayton, Ohio, and I grew up in Rochester, New York, but I went to school in Boston.
Okay. So what about your upbringing? I mean, what was it about your life that led to music, and more specifically, how jazz became your world?
That's a great question. So I guess my grandfather and my grandmother were both jazz musicians, and my grandfather played trombone in the Korean War. It's kind of how he got his start playing, and I actually have his horn. It's a 1941 King 2B. It's an amazing trombone. But I remember them playing when I was a kid, and I got a trombone when I was 8, and I don't ever really remember asking for it. I just got it. And both my aunt and uncle are trumpet players, and they were actually both my music teachers. And my uncle is a really fantastic drummer. So there's just like music all throughout my family. In terms of jazz, my grandparents would play at a nursing home every week, and they would also watch me too when my mom was at work. So I'd kind of just like tag along. I'd listen, and then I would go and I wasn't too interested. But then I just asked if I could play with them. And so they're like, okay, we got to teach you a couple of songs. So I remember the first tune I learned was Bye Bye Blackbird and Mercy, Mercy, Mercy. And so I just would practice them so I could sound good enough to play along with them. And that was my first real exposure to jazz. And then in elementary school, my aunt had a jazz group that she ran. But I don't think I really kind of fell in love with jazz until I was in high school, maybe sophomore or junior year, when I started to play in a youth jazz orchestra in Rochester called the EYJO, which was musicians from high school musicians from Buffalo, Syracuse, pretty much the whole upstate New York area. And they were just fantastic. I felt so embarrassed when I got into the band because everyone was just amazing. So that was my first real exposure to playing in a band like that, and also my first real kick that I needed to start practicing and checking out the music, because I didn't really know what bebop was. I didn't really know, I mean, I knew who Miles Davis was, but I didn't really know like a lot of the foundations. And there's actually you probably know it, but Jazz 90.1 in Rochester. So I would listen to that radio station kind of after school or going to rehearsal, and slowly they'd have certain programs where they would play like Blue Note Hour from, 7 to 12 at night, or, they would do like a showcase on Saturday of a certain artist. So I would just listen. And a lot of the music I heard and fell in love with was through that radio station. So I started to buy CDs and eventually started, transcribing. And of course in college, that's when I got really whipped into shape. But yeah, it was definitely a long road. I definitely, jazz wasn't my first attraction in music, but it definitely morphed into that as time went on.
It's interesting. I think about, the annals of radio and how much it's kind of brought people to music, and it did me too. There was a local guy here in Kansas City named Dr. Mike Pettingale, and I used to listen to that. And I was in my 20s, and I had my first apartment. I let that, the windows open, and the jazz was wafting through, and it was just amazing stuff. And I think about all of the different things that have happened because of radio and how many people. And I went to a Bobby Watson socially distanced show this summer, and it was awesome. And I had a downbeat shirt on, and a dude stopped me, and he looked like someone that probably should have been at a country show, did not look like a jazz guy. And he's like, "What's downbeat, man?" And I thought he was trying to like rib me and start something. And I was like, "What?" And I just kind of went with it. And he was like, "What's downbeat, man?" I said, "Oh, it's like the Jazz Bible. It's a magazine." And we started talking, and this dude started listening to a late night jazz show with his daughter during the pandemic and totally got hooked and never really thought about jazz until this happened. So I think about these triumphs that happen in radio, and that's the
amazing.
cool thing. Yeah. And I hear a lot about that from a lot of these, a lot of musicians that they've listened to radio, but you have a lot of influences in your arsenal too. I mean, I noticed in your bio that, you've been swayed by different things like funk and soul and all kinds of things. So, how do all of those come together for your sound? Are those conscious things that you've kind of tried to make a part of your sound, or is it just happened by osmosis, just by you doing what you do?
I think probably a combination of both. Whenever I write something, I always start with the melody. Like the melody is my God in terms of composition, and then I try to think of like the world around it, like the groove, and I'll just try different things out, and sometimes it'll come with like if I hear a swing behind it, or I'll hear more of like a neo soul drum groove. But I try to just come up with a groove that's unique to the song, and not necessarily, maybe it could be interpreted as, a New Orleans thing or a funk thing, but it's just like a rhythm that is unique to the melody that I wrote, and then kind of just trying to like morph it in a certain direction. But I try to listen to a lot of different styles of music. Like I was just listening to like a Peter, Paul and Mary album a little while ago, and there's this George Duke album that I'm really into, and my roommates are like, they always want me to put this on. I think it's called Rainbow, and it's just wild and funky. But mostly just I try to listen to music that when I listen to it, it really makes me feel like good. And then I listen to what kind of groove is going on, like how are they playing it, and then I just try to like copy and paste that to my music, and see what happens.
Yeah, there's a local guy here in town, Brian Scarborough. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a trombonist in Kansas City. And in the old world, he used to play at this place called Homer's, and I used to get down there and see him. And there was one show in particular. I remember watching him play the trombone, and I've seen Delfeo Marsalis in town, and I've I've always thought the trombone's kind of like the vibe. It's not a common instrument, but it has power, and there's a majesty with how it ties things together. And I was just thinking, of all the instruments that are brass, the trombone's so unique because you literally don't have these like things that stop, these levers that go down, or these buttons you push. It's like there's so much latitude because you can pull that in and out. Have you ever thought about kind of the latitude that you get with an instrument like that that's not fixed with certain things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the first time I really got into a solo, like kind of got lost in that world, was when I just kind of, I mean, like you said, you don't have the levers, you don't have the keys to look down at. You're kind of just, at a certain point, at least for me when I play, it's just like you're going with your ear, and you practice your chords and your arpeggios. But once you get into that world, you kind of, I think that's the thing I like about the trombone the most when I'm improvising. It's just like you can really feel like so fluid with it. Like you can just go anywhere you want, and it's pretty easy to get out of, I wouldn't say trouble, but just like to maneuver around notes once you kind of learn all of the building blocks, like how the arpeggios work. But the thing too with the trombone is like there are certain patterns in it, but there's not enough patterns to make it where you can kind of fall back on those, because in certain keys it's just like you can't get away with that. So you really have to know the instrument inside and out in order to have a command when you improvise. But yeah, I mean, I think about it all the time, because when you really get into it, you're not thinking about, okay, I gotta play this pattern, or this is the chord I'm going to play. You're kind of just going with where your ear is taking you, and all the things that you've practiced, over the years kind of just come out. So once you get to that point, it's a very freeing instrument.
I really dig the cover of Hangout Theory. It just has a good kind of, it just feels good. It looks good. Who did that?
Thanks. My friend Tyler Bennicott did that. He has a studio called Deadbeat Studios in Lowell. But he was my really good friend from school. He was his roommate. And my buddy and I were like, I was recording with him, and I just kind of said, hey, do you think Tyler would be able to do this cover? Because I had basically the cover was like an idea I had, like just an image, a thing that I thought represented the name, like Hangout Theory. And I had told it to a couple of people who they just didn't want to do it. So I was like, shoot, I gotta get this thing rolling. I want to release it, and I can't find anyone to do this cover for me. Yeah, I just contacted him, and we talked. It was a great experience. I really love like collaborating with other artists, especially with something that's not fully music related. So I kind of just explained the scene to him. I gave him the colors I wanted, and then I don't know if you've seen this. There's a J.J. Johnson and Kai Winding album called, it's like J&K plus 6, but they're all like there's a whole trombone octet on the cover, and they all the trombones are kind of like interconnected in a certain way. It's like a ladder, like some are sitting on the trombones, and there's like birds. It's a really cool cover. So like the general idea is based on that cover, kind of like the style of the artwork, and just the fact that there's like this whole scene happening together, but it kind of all revolves around one central element. But it was a long process, lots of drafts, but he did a fantastic job. I was just floored when I saw the result, and I think it really kind of brought the whole project together for me, because that just the image. I love album art, and kind of it's in a way, it's a representation of what you've written and how you want people to see it when they first pick up your album, or they go on to Spotify and look at the cover. So I'm glad that it makes you feel happy, because that's what I was going for.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's great, man. So what was the first live jazz show you saw that made you think, man, that's what I would love to do with my life?
I know I went to a lot of shows when I was a kid. I guess the one that really sticks out to me was there were a couple. They used to have this thing called Exodus to Jazz. It was like a monthly jazz show. They'd bring like Sean Jones came one time and played, and like Dave Gibson would come play. I mean, oh man, I can't think of one particular show. My senior year of high school, I went and heard Trombone Shorty play at the Jazz Festival. It was like kind of right before he got big. And I was already kind of going to music school. Like I knew I wanted to be a musician, but I guess that show was the first time I had heard somebody with the trombone doing styles of music that I was attracted to that had elements of jazz in it. And that was kind of the first sense of like, this is the direction I want to go in. That was probably the most vivid show. But as a kid, I definitely remember going to hear Dave Gibson play at there's this hotel called the Strathallan. And he did like a little workshop with the band, and then he invited everyone to come listen to him in this tiny club with some like faculty from Eastman. And he like came over and talked to me, and it was a really nice experience. And that was kind of like, as a young trombone player, that was probably the first time I had really seen like a really good jazz player from New York playing with a band. And I mean, it was like I didn't really even know that was a possibility until I heard that show.
What do you hope both musician and the audience realizes about this time away from live music when we do return into relatively full force?
Wow. I mean, I hope people realize how much they need it in their lives as much as, you know, the performers need to perform. It's just this kind of natural force that exists. And that, our economy, everything is based on people going out and spending money, supporting each other. And the fact that musicians, for better or for worse, need that. But basically, I just hope people realize how much, they need it. Not that they want it, but they need to go hear live music in order to have a more enriching and exciting life.
So why do you love jazz?
Ooh.
Huh.
That's I guess my first thought when I think of jazz, like I think of just the feeling you get when you walk in and you hear that, like, just swinging beat. And that when you play, I'll put it this way. My favorite part about being a jazz musician is not like playing the big concert, the formal thing. I love just being the band at like a party or a house show, and that's where I really see jazz as like the best. Like, Miles said, it's a social music. And I love being just that fly on the wall, like adding to the vibe. I don't care if people are talking when I'm playing. I love that feeling of being, because I think my personality is, I'm kind of like halfway between an introvert and an extrovert. I don't really like the center of attention, but I definitely like to kind of be with the, whatever's going on. And being a jazz musician, I think, is just like perfect in that setting. So yeah, I just love the sense of adding to the atmosphere. Like, you get to create that. You get to be what people are coming to hear inside this space. And that's why I wish more restaurants and clubs would kind of like realize that when they have a live band, it's not just that, I think some restaurant owners just see it as like, oh, well, it's kind of a gimmick, like we have a live band, but in the sense they're really creating quality when they get quality musicians to, like, you walk into a restaurant and you hear, a beautiful live piano playing, and you're just going to remember that experience a lot more. So I guess it kind of ties into the whole idea of like people need live music more than they really realize it.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, that you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? Well, I guess I'm just a trombonist and a bassist trying to, find that happy medium in life of being able to perform and kind of just enjoy, all the great things life has to offer. Like, I think the thing about being a musician that a lot of people don't think about is, like, when you're a professional musician, you wake up every single day and you have to play your instrument. It's just like, it's not a matter of, maybe I'll get to it later. It's like, you have to play it. And, obviously you have to work, you have to do all the things that society requires of you. But just kind of that pull between, your musical world, like wanting to be in your own world all day and then having to like go out, and, be a part of society. So I guess, in a nutshell, that's who I am. I'm somebody who really wants to just be in a musical world 24/7. I want to play all the time. I want to work with people, and everything in my life is kind of, I'm pointing myself hopefully in that direction to be able to do that someday.
Perfect, man. Will, thanks for taking a minute up to Neon Jazz today, opening up. Good luck with the album and just the future.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is a great conversation.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview. We give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Boston, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Will for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.